Hello, welcome back again. I want to give you a rundown on sidechaining and why people would want a sidechain and different methods for sidechaining. Let's check it out. Now that sounds nice and all, but there's some distortion on the sub bass caused by the kick drum. We're going to use sidechaining to get rid of this issue so it sounds a little bit more like this. So what is sidechaining exactly? Well, old hardware compressors had a separate extra input that you could feed an additional signal into that would trigger the compression on the audio. You could feed drums into this separate input, which would cause the main signal to be ducked, which is a term that means lowered volume. Most producers are interested in the ducking from the drums, so I'm going to stick to that for this tutorial. Traditional sidechaining is a very complicated and expressive effect, also very powerful, which is why I'm going to cover the traditional side in a subsequent episode all its own. In this episode, I'm going to concentrate on simulated sidechaining with ducking through plugins and automation. Let's get into it. We're going to use one of my favorite plugins, Volume Shaper. First, we're going to select a curve that we're going to use to shape the audio. Secondly, we're going to switch the sync from BPM synced to MIDI one-shot beat. Let's drag this last point all the way to the right. Now let's click on Settings, and then select a MIDI input port that we'll remember. How about the number 69? That'll work. Now insert a new MIDI out plugin instance. Don't worry about any settings except the port, which will switch to that same number that we chose before. Make a new pattern and call it Sidechain Trigger. You can also name the MIDI out instance to that same name if you'd like. I called mine SC Trigger. Now put a single note on the first step of the pattern. Then copy that pattern to everywhere there's a kick or a snare. Now, let's solo the bass and the kick drum and see how they sound together. No distortion, that's great. Now let's make a new bus and repeat the same steps to add a volume shaper to that channel. That way, we have a separate volume shaper for all the other instruments that we can edit independently. Don't forget to set the same MIDI port number. Let's hear it. Sounds great. On a side note, the benefit of this method is multi-band volume shaping, so you can have a separate curve for each frequency range. This is great for music types like future bass and progressive house. So the next method I'm going to show you is pure volume automation. I'm using a plugin called Effector because of this gain knob, which goes from 100% to 0%, which is perfect for what we're trying to do. First right-click on it and click Create Automation Clip. Let's make this clip short and give it an exponential rise, shaped kind of like an inverse kick drum. Then copy it to wherever there's a kick or a snare. If you want a different curve for your snare drum, simply extend out the clip, then cut it into its own slice and shape it accordingly. Then copy them to their respective places. Okay, let's put another effector on the general instrument bus. Then we'll link that gain knob to the same automation clip that we just edited. Now let's hear it with all of the automation. That just about does it. You can use either of these techniques or the third technique that I will discuss in the next video. See you for now. Well, there you have it. If you thought this was helpful, make sure that you like, subscribe, all of that jazz. Try to spread it because we're trying to get this started to make this like a weekly thing. If you have any questions or you want me to tackle a certain issue, DM us or add a comment, because if we're helping people, then you're helping us, and we're trying to keep that whole thing going. Thanks for watching.